Good evening and welcome to the F1Stop show. I'm your host, Sam Oni, and with me is Wes Spearman. Wes, how are you this evening?
Yeah, pretty good. Fortunately, a lot drier here in the UK than it was in Singapore at the weekend. But I think we still got an interesting race out of it. But yeah, I'm pretty good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thank you. I thought, you know, predicting the weather was just, I think that was almost the highlight of this Grand Prix weekend, just the weather in Singapore, because I don't know if it usually rains in Singapore. I mean, I've never been to the country, but seeing that it rained, it was just like, wow. I mean, you must have been asking questions. Are we gonna get a race on our hands did that weekend? So, and well, it looks like we did. But well, let's jump straight into it, shall we? So, Singapore hit with heavy rain, but still the show went on, and it was Red Bull's Sergio Perez that came out on top. What do you make of his
Yeah,
race or the race in general?
an exceptional race from Perez. I think he started, was it second on the grid? I think Leclerc got pole. Perez second, and I think Hamilton was third. There was a very very short gap between pole position and third place. Then there was a bit more of a gap between Hamilton and whoever was in fourth. Can't remember now. Science
Carlos
maybe.
Sainz.
Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, what a drive from Perez up there with. I know he hasn't got many race wins in Formula One. This might only be his third or fourth, but it's either his middle best or his second best. I reckon. I think his best was probably his first win in Sakia
Yeah,
when he was with Racing Point. But yeah, this is definitely second out of his what 3, 4 race wins, however many he's got. Yeah, led every lap. Um, I think won the race by quite some margin in the end. I think it was about 7.5 seconds he led
yeah.
from Charles Leclerc at the end, although he did get penalised for I think it was so like not staying within 10 car lengths of the safety car.
Mm.
He did that twice, so Stewards handed him a 5 second penalty and 2 points on his license, but it didn't really matter. In the end, he still keeps the win, and yeah, do his confidence a lot of good, I reckon. Bit off, not necessarily off the pace the last few weeks, but he's just not put in many sort of noteworthy performances, if you like. Um, yeah, I think to lead every lap of one of the most difficult tracks on the calendar in some pretty tricky conditions as well. When you got two Ferraris pretty much up your backside for most of it. Hats off to Perez. He's pulled a blinder off there, I reckon.
And Perez, you know, great drive from him. But it's interesting because when you look at the drivers' championship, we're all right. We're all thinking, okay, Max Verstappen has got his title theoretically wrapped up. Let's leave it at that. But the the battle for second, third, fourth, it's pretty intriguing, and we could see a Red Bull 1-2 in the drivers' championship.
Yeah, potentially. And as you say, Verstappen well in the lead. He's still over 100 points clear of Charles Leclerc in second. Um, could potentially win it this weekend in Japan. Yeah, the battle for second is really very, very close. There's 2 points difference between Leclerc in second and Perez in third. 237 plays 235. And then the battle for fourth, as you say, 1 point separating George Russell and Carlos Sainz. Russell with 203, Sainz with 202. And then there's a bit of a gap for Hamilton in sixth, 170, then an even bigger gap for Lando Norris, best of the rest with 100 points, which I think is a great result for Norris and McLaren. Um, yeah, getting back to your point, it is very very close, and yeah, I don't see any reason why we couldn't have a Red Bull 1-2 in the driver's standings. I think going back to back to the start of the season, we thought, oh, here we go, it's going to be Verstappen versus Leclerc, but now it's actually it's not really, it's Verstappen versus no one really. Let's be honest at this moment
Yeah,
in time, but yeah, it's yeah the battle for second is really hotting up and. Yeah, Checo got some 25 points. I don't think he got fastest lap. Yeah, pulled back some points on Leclerc, and yeah, it's all down to him to take that second place in the drivers' standings.
So let's get back to the race. The opening stages of the race, Perez gets when I saw it, it was quite a slow start from both drivers. No one really, you know, there wasn't really a big gap, but Perez managed to get into turn one very quickly ahead of Leclerc. And opening exchanges, nothing too bad happened. There may have been like a Haas going off into the runoff area, but it was around lap 7, lap 8 that we saw Guan Yu Zhou and Latifi of Alfa Romeo and Williams, respectively, just coming together. And it resulted in the Chinese driver Zhou retiring from the race.
Yeah, I mean, Singapore, first of all, it keeps its record of having a safety car at every Grand Prix that's been at Marina Bay.
Yeah.
13 years, I think it is now, 14 years. Like 14 years, but obviously few races given the last couple of years it hasn't been held. Yes, still a safety car for every Singapore Grand Prix at Marina Bay. But yeah, the actual collision itself, I mean, Latifi just completely cut across Zhou Guan Yu from the way I see it anyway. You had Zhou on, I think they were going into a right-hander. I can't remember which turn it was. But you had Zhou on the outside, Latifi on the inside, and Latifi trying to get back on the racing line, but just completely sort of cuts across Guan Yu Zhou, clips his tyres, Zhou into the wall, if you like. And yeah, I mean, Latifi, you've got mirrors. You can turn your head, you can see you've got an Alfa Romeo like a foot to your left. I suppose it goes to show sort of why Latifi isn't going to be in F1 from next year with moves like that. I mean, he had ample enough space to take the corner, but yeah, it was a bit of a weird one, I think, because there was just no real need for it. Essentially, I don't think. And yeah, Joe was quite understandably not too happy. He was just like, "Oh, Latifi's just hit me," and I think I saw something from Fred Vasseur, the sort of the Alfa Romeo team principal, saying like there are multiple reasons for retirement. Sometimes it's engine, sometimes it's driver error, sometimes it's Latifi. He said something along those lines, which is quite funny. But at the same time, this is a little bit true, I suppose.
Well, it's not the first time Latifi has caused a a driver retirement or some sort of collision. But there was some stuff last season that happened, but we're not going to talk about that anyway. But it wasn't only Joe that went into the barriers or went into the escape road. We saw the likes of Yuki Tsunoda having his struggles. Hamilton went into the wall, but managed to, you know, get himself out of it. Verstappen, my word, well, it's not every day you go into a pit stop, put on fresh tires, take the biggest risk in trying to, overtake the next car ahead of you and just go running up into the escape road, is it? But hey, that's Max Verstappen for you. But it just shows. Go on.
So when I first saw that incident on the highlights, I thought his engine blew up. There was that much smoke caused from Verstappen locking up that I thought his engine had blown up and he was out of the race. But no, he just locked up, sailed past, I think, both McLarens, or certainly one of them. Yeah, went into the escape road. And I think he dropped from, was it 5th place to last place or something? Or 16th, as it was, because he had a few retirees. But yeah, I mean, to see Hamilton in the barriers was quite, again, a strange one. You'd rarely see that happen. And yeah, he just went too deep into the corner and just went straight on. And yes, it's a weird one. Two world champions making pretty simple mistakes at the end of there, I think. Strange.
It is, and I mean, it just shows how technical Singapore Marina Bay is because, like you said, a lot of turns and there's not really a lot of room for braking. So I feel like Singapore is a very precise track. You can't make rooms for mistakes. But well, then there's Monaco. But yeah. We won't talk about that. But yeah, Singapore's a very, technical. Everything has to be like precise. You get what I mean? So that's about that. But then, I mean, coming to the end of we had the safety car. We had the safety car, and that was a big talking point as well. That was a big, big point in the race.
Yeah, that was when everyone. I think it was Sonoda who brought out the safety car. He went into the wall, and yeah, everyone pretty much switched from inters to. I think pretty much everyone was on mediums, with the exception of one of the back markers who went on softs or hards. Can't remember now.
Maybe Bottas could be.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose if the race got underway when it was supposed to, then there was no chance they would have got onto the slick tires because it was absolutely chucking it down. I think the race was supposed to start about 8 o'clock local time, but it didn't get underway until 9:05. They delayed it for an hour and 5 minutes,
Mm.
and that plus the two safety cars meant that once again the Singapore Grand Prix, I think it was supposed to be 61 laps. All in all, it only lasted 48 laps. It went down to the clock again. Again, it just goes to show how challenging track Singapore is and how difficult it is for the drivers to keep racing. And for 2 hours straight, pretty much with all the corners and the temperature. Yes, it was raining, but it would still be pretty warm out there in Singapore. Yeah, I went down to the clock again, and I kind of like it when that happens because it's a bit of an oddity in Formula One because 90% of the time you see races go down to number of laps, but yeah, Singapore just just like to spice things up a bit.
Well, that's Singapore for you, and we won't have to wait long. Just another 12 months, I guess, into the 2023 Singapore. We'll be back. Now, Max Verstappen, he finished seventh in Singapore, but didn't quite work out for him. So Singapore's closed for him, but opens Suzuka, Japanese Grand Prix this weekend, and he has another opportunity to clinch his second title in a row. Now, question on our lips is he going to win it in Suzuka? Is he going to win it in Japan? Answer, pending. Yeah.
It's a tough one. I don't know the sort of permutations to what he needs to win the championship this weekend. I'd suspect it's reasonably similar to Singapore because obviously Perez got points and Leclerc got 18, I think. Verstappen would have gotten
3,
6, 8,
6. Yeah.
finished seventh. Yeah, I haven't seen anything from like the sky, so I can't work it out off the top of my head either. But yeah, it's going to be in this. It's certainly in the next 3 rounds. I think that Verstappen, as long as he doesn't have another poor weekend like in Singapore, then and if he wins, come second, certainly on the podium anyway, it's going to be in the next 3 rounds. I would have thought. Yeah, I don't see why he can't do it in Singapore.
Japan.
I don't know. Japan, sorry. Yeah, I had Suzuka in my head and then said Singapore. They both begin with an S. that's my excuse anyway. But yeah, I don't see any reason why you can't do it in Japan. I think it's a good track for Red Bull, although they're not with Honda anymore. So, but who knows really? It should be a lot drier, I think, than Singapore. I haven't seen the forecast for this weekend, but I'd expect it to be a drier race. I certainly haven't seen anything on social media that would suggest it's a wet race, as people like usually post the forecast. Oh, is it going to be a wet race this weekend? Haven't seen any of that, so I assume it's a dry race.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
But then who knows? Ferrari were strong in the dry and qualifying in Singapore, but then two completely different style of tracks. One's a twisty, turdy street circuit. The other one's quite a fast, hard on tyre wear, not street circuit, if you like, proper racing track. And one of my favourites as well. I do love Suzuka as a racetrack. I know you like it as well.
Yeah.
But I can see Red Bull being pretty strong this weekend, and Ferrari there or thereabouts, battling with Mercedes maybe, although they didn't have the best of weekends in Singapore, but then again, completely different tracks. So yeah, I'm going a strong outing for Red Bull this weekend.
So, do we both agree that Red Bull, whether it's one or two, are on the podium this weekend?
Yeah, certainly one of them will be, if not both. Yeah, I can see Perez having a good race. I think he's got his mojo back in Singapore, and I can see him maybe not a 1-2, but maybe a 1-3 with Verstappen and Perez.
So, say if Max Verstappen does win the championship, how would you describe him? Because he's a man of ruthless aggression, if you like. When I say that, he's a risk taker, you know. He doesn't shy from a challenge. We saw that last season, and we've seen that, well, a bit this season as well.
Yeah, I think he probably does have a more aggressive driving style than some of the other drivers on the grid. I feel like he can be a bit hot-headed at times. I think some of the things he says is or can be quite sort of arrogant in a way, if you like, because he is only quite a young man. He's only 24, 25. Yeah, he's still got such a long career ahead of him in Formula One or at least other motorsport. But if he keeps carrying on with the skills he has as a driver, and if Red Bull and potentially another team down the line, who knows? Probably not. Because I can't see Verstappen switching teams. Even in 10 years' time, he's still going to be at Red Bull, I reckon. But yeah, if Red Bull could keep producing the cars that they have done over the last couple of years, then I don't see any reason why Verstappen can't at least level Hamilton and Schumacher with 7 world titles, if not if not break them.
Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, would I be surprised though? That's the question. If he carries on like this, like you said, but because take Hamilton out of the equation, but Vettel's retiring. Who else do you realistically
Mhm.
see going toe to toe with Verstappen? Like, who can you firmly give a mention? Okay, this driver can give Verstappen a run for his money.
I think Russell would be one for definite. I think the 2 Ferrari drivers, Leclerc and Sainz, also can give him a run for his money. Norris maybe. I think a bit of an odd one, but Ricardo. If Ricardo stays on the grid and in a competitive car, he's not going to challenge him for world titles. But when we saw the pairing at Red Bull, and I know that was earlier on in Verstappen's career, but they took the fight to each other. They were quite evenly matched. Although Ricardo's career is, well, is there much argument about it? He's taken a backward step since he left Red Bull. Um, but in terms of actual skill level of the drivers, I think Ricardo is certainly up there to want to take the challenge to Max Verstappen.
Well, who knows what's going to happen in Suzuka this weekend? And it brings us to my favorite game, prediction time. Well, it's not really a game, but we just mentioned how the race is going to pan out for the weekend. So, what's going to happen in Suzuka this weekend, Wes? Who do you see on pole? Who do you see winning the race? And instead of a driver of the day, how many seconds do you feel um, the gap will be between the race winner and second place?
Um, I don't know why, but I'm seeing Perez on pole this weekend. I don't know whether that's just because he had a good race in Singapore. I feel like Perez has got a pretty strong record at Suzuka. I think he got points for, is it Sauber, I think, or Force India a number of years ago now. But I just feel like he has that edge over some of the other drivers. I might have said Singapore. If I say Singapore most of the time, I mean Suzuka this episode. um, yeah, I think in terms of podium, I think Verstappen's going to take the win. Um, Perez third, and second place probably Leclerc. Unless Ferrari have another shocker, who knows? Yeah, seconds between first and second is an interesting one because I mean, if Verstappen's going to win, I think I can see him being quite dominant. But then again, over the last
Do
few
you
weeks
think
or
it's
so,
going to
they've
be
been
one of those ones where, I don't know, he starts on the front row and then overtakes his like nearest challenger on the first turn, and then sails into the sunset? Do you think it's going to
poss-
be that kind of thing?
possibly, yeah, possibly. Yeah, I think there's going to be a good 20-second gap between Verstappen in first and Leclerc, say, second. I just don't see Ferrari have the same sort of pace at these sort of tracks as Red Bull. And yeah, the way Verstappen's completed his victories over the course of the year, they have been quite substantial margins. No one's ever really gotten close or within even like 5 seconds, say.
Yeah.
So I think if Verstappen does win, I think it will be by quite some margin. I'm going 20 seconds at least, I reckon.
Okay. No, not too bad. Not too bad. I think that's a sensible shout, to be honest. I mean, for pole sitter, I think it's gonna be fairly close. I think Charles Leclerc is gonna be on pole this weekend. Um, I don't know. I think it's pretty much over for Charles Leclerc in terms of trying to get a title challenge. You know, I think it's one that just got away, but I think pole for Charles Leclerc will be, another great achievement for him. Back-to-back poles if it were to happen. Um, but yeah, and then Verstappen to take the win. Well, who knows, potentially clinch the championship. I'd say Leclerc second, Perez third, maybe a Mercedes in fourth place. Who knows? And then as for seconds, if Verstappen is to win, maybe, just maybe, I'm thinking maybe 15 seconds. I say 15 and not 20 because I feel like Charles Leclerc, if he can get his car right, if the mechanic can get his setup right and everything, those 5 seconds could be crucial. One thing I've learned about F1 for a long time now, that time is very important. The time it takes to get into the pit stop, closing speed, everything. Um, and I think those 5 seconds, if he can get it somewhere on Verstappen, I don't see why, 15 seconds won't be, it's not going to be mad, if you like. So I think 15 seconds could just be the gap between Verstappen or whoever turns out to win the race between first and second.
Yeah, I think 15 seconds is quite some way because I mean, if you count it, Verstappen crosses the line.
Yeah,
It feels like forever, doesn't it? I
yeah.
know that was only like 2 seconds, but um, I think 15 seconds. I think Verstappen will cross the line, and whoever's in second, Leclerc, for example, probably wouldn't have even would have only just gotten to the last chicane at least. I reckon.
Yeah.
So yeah, 15, 20 seconds. I mean, if it's down to like a second or less than a second, even then, I mean, would have seen a pretty good race. But yeah, I don't think so. So far this weekend.
So that's the Japanese Grand Prix for this weekend. Um, Verstappen has another chance of clinching his world championship. I mean, oh, and I've forgotten to mention one thing. Uh, had Verstappen continued his miraculous run of consecutive wins, he would have become what, the youngest driver, I think, to win like successive races in a row. I think the record was, I don't know, 9 or 10 or 11 by Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, I think it was 9 races by Vettel. So yeah, which is I think I can't remember if Verstappen's equaled it or fallen just short, but Actually, let me check. I've got the schedule up here. Yeah, Verstappen won the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, so he fell quite quite a way short. Only got, well, I say only 5 consecutive, but 5 consecutive is still quite a lot. Yeah, so we can't break that this year, but I'll try again next year.
So, to finish off, we're going to talk about Red Bull as a whole. Red Bull, it's like they always going back and forth, trying to be the big team of F1, if you like. Always, always dipping their noses in things that doesn't concern them or whatnot, or Christian Horner having, expressing his opinion on one thing or another. But in the F1 world, we've heard that Red Bull's budget limit, if you like, has come to light, spilt the beans, if you like. Have you got? Do you know much about that?
A little bit. I think it's just rumors at this stage, really circulated. I mean, mainly by Mercedes and Ferrari, which isn't really that surprising when you come to think of it. Red Bull's two main rivals, if you like, trying to circulate or saying that Red Bull have spent over their 2021 budget, which, I mean, I haven't really seen much detail, much like actual facts about this. Is, as I say, just rumors. It's really the WTF1 article. It says Total Wolff spoke to Sky F1 on Friday practice, claimed that it was an open secret in the paddock that one team had broken the 2021 cost cap, and then quotes massively. Ferrari also want to see quite severe measures if it's found that any team has broken the budget cap regulations, which I think is fair. I think that's a fair statement. Then obviously Christian Horner's come out and shut those down, not saying it's just speculation. We haven't broken any rules. Taken aback by the comments, all the usual stuff that you'd expect the team boss to say.
Of course.
I think it's potentially a bit of mind games, if you like, with Singapore being Verstappen's first chance this year to win the title. Is it surprising that we see these rumors come out at that exact same time? Potentially, probably not. Yeah, I don't know, because it's a tricky one, because Red Bull they're a little bit of a cheeky sort of team. I think Christian Horner is the sort of person, or he gives us that sort of persona of being a little bit sneaky, trying to sort of find loopholes in places in the rules. Yeah, I'd be surprised that any team did breach it, just because of the FIA would come down on them like a ton of bricks, I think. But yeah, if they did, then they'll obviously need to be punished, whether that's retrospectively penalise Verstappen somewhere in the 2021 season. So Hamilton gets his 8th title. Who knows? Whether it's this season, maybe. But even if it is this season, if it's a points deduction, it won't make any difference really, unless they wipe his points out completely. Or Perez's, for that matter as well. It's the same driver pairing, isn't it? Or just their constructors' title points. Yeah, if they need to be punished in some way. I'm sure they'll get a fine if they are found guilty, and there'll be some sort of points penalty, whether it's to the drivers or the team. Most likely the team, I think. Yeah, at the moment, I think it's just mind games from Mercedes and Ferrari at the moment to try and not necessarily trip Red Bull up, but just be like, we're watching you, that sort of thing. Just like, Red Bull won 4 back-to-back with Vettel, then it was Mercedes dominance, and now Red Bull are fighting at the top again. Yeah, I don't think it's any coincidence that it's Mercedes and Ferrari throwing these rumors at them.
Well, a lot of stuff going on around in F1. Red Bull, Verstappen's close to clinching what looks like his second world title. Mercedes are saying, Mercedes are saying he he said, she said about Red Bull and the budget cap. And Nicholas Latifi's caused another, well, collision in the Singapore Grand Prix. But, well, this weekend, it's all about Suzuka. It's all about whether Verstappen can clinch his title this season. I mean, what a season he's had right from Bahrain up until Suzuka now, and there are still a few more races to go. Mentioning Austin, Mexico, Abu Dhabi at the very end, but you know we'll get there. But now it's Suzuka, so we've come to the end of the F1 Stop show episode. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and you can also email us at f1stopshow@gmail.com. So I've been your host, Sam Oni, and it's a goodbye from me. Bye bye. And it's goodbye from Wes.
Bye.
And we hope you enjoy the Japanese Grand Prix this weekend.